So you're getting nervous about the intro.
At Elevation Nation, we always talk about your mindset. But in addition to your mindset, there's another part of your mind that you always have to work on, and that's being educated. Tonight on the Elevation Nation podcast, we are talking with Brett Dashevsky, and he is kicking butt in the education space, the healthcare space. Honestly, it's a little bit of a hybrid, and we're going to let him talk about that. And that's in addition to his full-time job as a product manager at Capital One. We are excited to talk to you tonight, Brett, and really just hone in on your mindset and how you've been conquering the real world, and then how you are helping young people become more educated and work on their mindsets as well. So welcome to the podcast, bro.
Hey, thank you very much, Parker, Sam. Happy to be here.
We are pumped to have you, Brett. We actually had on a doctor a few weeks ago. We had a whole conversation about the healthcare industry and how confused Sam and I were. So I will say, I'm not expecting you to educate us more on the healthcare, sector, but obviously your newsletter could do that. But more so, I was going through the newsletter. It's dope. Obviously, that's not your full-time job. You have a full-time job that pays the bills. We're going to get into all of it today. Elevation Nation, this is going to be a great conversation. And obviously, Brett's a Terp, so we love Brett.
Yes, go Terps.
So, Brett, we'll just get into it. We'll start with an elevator pitch because it is the Elevation Nation podcast. Who is Brett Dashevsky? You know, what's your background? Where'd you come from?
Sure.
Let's hear it.
All right, let's dive in. So, I guess if I'm pitching myself, Brett Dashevsky, he's a motivated individual who's funny, diligent, creative, who's motivated to work on innovative projects and take calculated risks to change society and the world for the good. And he enjoys leading teams of like-minded people to reach a larger vision. And he's doing that through a company he co-founded called Healthcare Huddle, and through his current job at Capital One, and his involvement in various community groups, staying involved in the Alumni Association with University of Maryland, and just serving as a resource to younger folks trying to navigate the world. So happy to be here, and happy to discuss more about what's going on and how to elevate ourselves.
Dang, the Smith School would be very proud with that elevator pitch, man. That was pretty damn professional right there. We'll have to get into we're gonna get beyond just that intro and get to know you a bit deeper here, Brett. But real quick, to level set with you and anyone new to the Elevation Nation podcast, we like to talk about a concept called mental fortitude. So for those of you that don't know what mental fortitude is, Parker and I believe that is the missing piece that you need as a young adult to truly conquer the real world and shift your mindset around mental fortitude. And we think mental fortitude is made up of three parts: self-awareness, vision, and accountability. So tonight, Brett, we're going to go through each of those three buckets of mental fortitude and talk to you about how you are using mental fortitude in your life at Cap One, as well as with Healthcare Huddle, and honestly, just growing up and trying to educate yourself and learn as much as you can, going to the University of Maryland and now as a young professional. So we're excited to get into it, man.
Let's do it.
I love mental fortitude, Sam, and I love this structure that we've built. And the first piece of mental fortitude, Brett and Elevation Nation, is self-awareness. So, Brett, we have a really simple question for you, and you may have touched on it in your elevator pitch, but what one or two words best describe you?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's a hard question, but
it's definitely not easy.
It's definitely not easy.
So take a minute. No, seriously. Take a minute. Think about it. I can cut all of the waiting time out.
Let's see. So, I think it as you gain more experience, through the real world, you go from high school to college, and then you're starting out in the working world, what I like to call real life. The words that you would use to describe you definitely change and evolve over time. So I'd say right now, like, two words describe me are creative, and diligent. I just feel like I've been able to really immerse myself in creativity, since graduating college, and leverage what I would consider a strength of mine. And then obviously just being diligent has come through, working hard in school, and then just staying organized and productive, with my current full-time job and with Healthcare Huddle. Diligent and creative.
Both of those are almost a bit opposite, right? Being creative, you're usually free-flowing, go with wherever the wind takes you, right?
Right.
And then being diligent and disciplined is a lot more of a type A analytical mindset.
Sure.
Is there a life event that maybe shaped each of those, and how, you pick those two words, is that based on anything? Were you like an artist growing up, but then you also loved coding or something like that? What kind of made you have those two words that really embody who Brett is?
Sure. So I just think my personality in general is more of the creative type. I growing up, I wasn't a big fan of structure. I like to do things my own way. And when I say structure, I mean like being told how to do something. I always wanted to find a different way, or, you find yourself in class like doodling versus listening to something that you're not interested in. And it's funny because it's focusing on the creative piece. I don't think I really realized until this year when I started to actually like leverage my creativity, building up Healthcare Huddle, and then for other people to like acknowledge it and appreciate it, that it really hit me. Like I've been like building up, for this moment my whole life. Like when I was in middle school, when I got like my first Mac computer, I was like on Pages, like was in love with all the templates that Apple had, and like would play around. And like I remember like making my first like a mock magazine with one of my home friends, and I remember like it wasn't that we were writing articles, but I just like wanted to design a magazine. And then, as I moved through high school, like I really loved like marketing. So I was involved in student government, and like I really liked throwing together graphics for like events that we were having. And then obviously that kind of continued in college. And then when my mindset started to shift towards like idea making and like wanting to be entrepreneurial, I would like just throw together like logos or like what I would see as an advertisement for like a potential business. But it was nothing at the time. Until like recently, I like look back and I'm like, here's what I've accomplished for Healthcare Huddle and what I'm doing in my full-time job. And I'm like, well, how did I get here? And I look back at those small moments that maybe just I passed over, but like reflected on, like those were all things that like I was just building upon, just kind of playing around with creativity. And creativity goes beyond like artwork and like marketing. It's like, how can you be creative in the way that like, you're writing something up, or how can you be creative in the way that like you're putting together a team and motivating them. So that's one aspect for creativity. And then I think just being diligent kind of just follows in a way, because in order to like get stuff done, you have to be diligent, you have to be organized. And I just think that through school, and like working hard and setting goals, it was like another avenue that I was following alongside creativity, and they were kind of going hand in hand together, and eventually like met at a crossroad. I guess this past year when I kind of had like a deeper reflection, through COVID, and was like, oh, like these two words, diligent and being creative, have really shaped who I am, this far into my life.
I think by the way, I love the story about you on the Mac when you were younger. I feel like I was like doing the same thing. Like,
yeah,
I'm putting together a little like business, and like in my head, like, oh, this is such a cool little thing. The world's never going to see it though, ever. And if I look back at it, I'm like, dang, that is dope. The world should have seen it.
No one has seen it
it's probably
since.
embarrassing.
No one has seen my stuff since like 2009 or something. So if I go back on my old computer, I got to reboot it and see what I have there.
Exactly. But I love the two words, creative and diligent, because like Sam said, they're almost so different and so unbelievably cool, because when I think of an entrepreneur, I think of a good entrepreneur needs those together. Mm-hmm. You need to be creative. You need to come up with new ideas. You need to think through new ways to solve problems. And diligent, you have to go and do them and make sure that you're tackling those problems with the solutions that you creatively thought about. And that's what's so beautiful about entrepreneurship, is that you never know what's going to come in front of you. You need creativity and diligence to get there. Where did the entrepreneurship come for you? Was it when you were young? Was it when you were sitting with that Mac, like even before sitting with that MacBook and you're like putting together a magazine? Where did entrepreneurship come from?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like you hear a lot of stories about people, like the folks, who quote unquote made it, and you hear about their interest in entrepreneurship or how they came about starting a company. And sometimes I think the stories are kind of like built on over the years to kind of frame something. And to be honest, I don't think it's like that glamorous in terms of how I got interested in entrepreneurship. I just do think it stemmed from that interest in being creative and solving problems and doing something that impacts other people, that allows me to work on something where like I'm in control of it. So, I guess going back to like middle school, when like you're exposed to a new group of people, you're exposed to new ideas, and like putting together that first magazine. Sure, it wasn't an actual business, but there was definitely like something envisioning, like, I'm creating a brand here. It's like my own magazine. Even though like it was like two or three pages, I put together the cover and that was enough. And then, through high school, I think like when I started to actually take like business courses and you got exposed to like Shark Tank, start to like envision yourself like creating the next big product. But you never know when that idea is going to come along, or when you see an opportunity where you can like challenge your inner entrepreneur. But come college, I remember freshman year, like there was the Kanye West shirts. I forget what they said on the back, in like cool font. And I was like, oh, it'd be really cool to create like, a shirt for like Maryland that said this. I wish I remember what the shirt was, but I basically put together the t-shirt and, like wanted to sell them. And I remember like reaching out to the school about it, and they're like, oh, you can't use our logo and stuff. And I remember like trying to gauge interest in the Facebook group, and everyone was like, yeah, we're interested. We would buy one. And I'm like, oh, this would be so cool. Like, oh my God, I could start a t-shirt company. That ended up not, happening. And that's when I think I really started to get interested in like entrepreneurship, and then had a pretty shitty internship my sophomore year. And like, all I could think about was like ideas, but it's like really hard to execute on an idea. And like, sometimes it's nice to have co-founders to do it with. So I feel like my mind has always been flowing with ideas through the years. And I think it just comes through exposing yourself to different environments and just getting older and learning more that just challenges yourself.
I think what's so interesting, I mean, from that experience and what you just walked through, and for Sam and myself, is when you think of entrepreneurship and you talk to someone who isn't an entrepreneur, and their perception of entrepreneurship is like, you're out to make a bunch of money and this and that, and you're trying to make the next big thing. But from what I've seen, and from Sam and I, and the entrepreneurs we've talked to and studied, it comes from something more. It comes from a drive to either solve a problem or bring something. For me, it's like to think about something and then make it real, make it something that I can put out into the world and share with everyone. Like our podcast, we're having this conversation now. It started from a little conversation that Sam and I had one day, and now it's on an app where my mom can tune in and my grandma can listen, and it's out there. And it's not about the money, because if it's about the money, where does the drive come? Where does that diligence come? Where does that creativity come? And I find with you, it's the same way. And that's what's so beautiful about it.
Right. And there's like, it's actually interesting because I thought about that because, like Healthcare Huddle, it's not making a ton of money, right? Yet, at least. And I look and I'm like, right. When you look back, you're like, oh, I always felt like entrepreneurship was like hustling and making money. And then as I delve into like more research about entrepreneurship, like there's different types of entrepreneurs. There is the hustler entrepreneur. You hear about the stories like I was going door to door selling XYZ. There's the entrepreneurs who are selling sneakers. The entrepreneurs who are reselling baseball cards. Those are like what you would call like the hustler entrepreneurs. They're making money. And then there's like the innovator entrepreneurs who are creating, something new, not with the intention like this is going to make money, but just to solve a problem. And then like, I don't know, those that are like researchers and come and discover something, and then they realize they can patent this and make money. So there is a range of entrepreneurship, and it's okay to be in any one of those buckets.
And the passion knew.
So, Brett, I got a story for you.
All right.
I'm going to throw it back here.
Story time
to
with Sam.
Parker, and we were seniors at Maryland, and as you know, we were obsessed with entrepreneurship.
Oh, okay.
And us two and our two other really good friends, Noah Schiff and Miles Grossman, we came back from summer break and said, we are going to start a company senior year. And we had no idea what it was going to be about, but we knew we wanted to do something. We were like, we've been here. We know there's problems we can solve. We want to try to dabble with entrepreneurship. Let's do it. So we rented one of those rooms in Stamp in the student union, and we said, we are not leaving here until we come up with an idea. We got Post-it notes, a crap ton of coffee, and we just locked ourselves in this room and came up with the craziest ideas. Crazy ideas.
When Sam, wait. When you say crazy, like when we're talking crazy, like not the best ideas. We're talking like crazy ideas.
Right.
Like terrible ideas, most of Parker's.
It's the crazy ideas that blow up, you know?
Exactly. You got to throw everything on the table. Sam knows that.
That's true. So whatever, long story short, we finally get out of that room and we come up with this idea that we want to bring food from DC that we can't get in College Park to college students, like pre-ordered events where we cater, whatever. It's like we're all like so excited after the first week. Then parties start happening, and we forgot about it, and it never went anywhere, right? And I think a lot of the times with entrepreneurs, everybody wants to say they're an entrepreneur. Everybody has that idea that they say, this could be legit. This could solve a problem. Not everybody takes that risk and just tries to start it, right? And I think one of the reasons for that is, one, it is so scary because nobody's ever done it before, but two, you're probably going to fail. And people don't like to fail, even if that means at least they tried. And so to get deep here for a second, I would rather fail 1,000 times than ever have to live with any regret that I didn't try something. And so that's kind of like the mentality that I think, and why I respect entrepreneurs so much, is like, I think I've talked to you maybe twice in my life, Brett, before this, but I saw that you were doing something with entrepreneurship, and I was like, Brett has the same mindset as me and Parker. He should come on the podcast. Like, right. That kid gets it. He gets who he is. He has mental fortitude. He has the balls to go take a chance and like try to do something because he doesn't want to live with regret. And so I think that mindset is something that if a lot more young people had, whether that's starting a company or just taking the time to have mental fortitude, figure out who you are, where you want to go and how to get there, I think a lot more people would feel fulfilled and satisfied and like they have a sense of direction in this crazy thing we call life, you know?
Right. Yeah, I think that's true. And that's what you hear about is like a lot of people have ideas and they don't execute on them because one, it requires a lot. And yeah, it is scary sometimes. And also like sometimes people aren't like ready completely. And also, yeah, I do think there's like the walk in the talk type of thing. Like, hey, you say you're going to do this. And it's like, you know, I definitely ran into that. I would always bring up ideas to my friends. And then it's so funny. My friends always joke. They're like, dude, you always end up just making a logo. And I'm like, I look back and I'm like, well, you know what? Maybe that logo making and the ideating in my head was leading to, you know, this moment. And, I co-founded Healthcare Huddle with my older brother, Jared, and one of his classmates in med school, Harrison. And, you know, it was my brother who had the idea. And then as I came on board, I kind of saw like, how can I use my challenge my inner entrepreneur, leverage that creativity and you know, being diligent and figure out ways that we can like grow this, expand this, turn this into a brand that people associate themselves with, and just be a part of that growth and expanding something. And honestly, when we started Healthcare Huddle, like in January of 2020, I didn't think it was going to be a business. I didn't think that it was going to really turn into anything. And that's what I feel like some of the best ideas kind of just come and just gain traction as you're moving. And basically stick.
It's so cool the way you just broke that down because that fits in perfectly with self-awareness, what we've just been talking about the last 10 minutes or so. You know who you are. You know the things that interest you. You know what you bring to the table. And when your brother probably gave you that, when you guys were talking about this idea, you're like, this is it. This is something I can provide value to, but I'm also going to enjoy. You had the self-awareness that this works for you. And what's unbelievable is that you guys created a vision together. And that takes us to the next section of our conversation, vision, right? So we're going to take a step back. And I know we've talked about, young Brett, but when you were younger, I'm sure you always didn't want to be an entrepreneur. What did you want to be when you grew up?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wanted to be an astronaut. No, I'm kidding.
Damn right.
You're right. Everyone wants to be an astronaut. I think, again, as I grew up and went through the stages of my life, my mindset of what I wanted to be changed. So my dad's a lawyer. So when you're in elementary school, I very much remember in second grade, which is crazy memory, but they're like, write down, what do you want to be, or what's your ambition or something. And I tried writing out lawyer, but I didn't know how to spell it, because there's a W in it, and I'm like in second grade. So there was one point where I wanted to be a lawyer in elementary school. And then I remember in middle school, I wanted to be a plastic surgeon. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I looked up like how much they pay, and I was into like design and creativity. So I'm like, oh, it's cool. Like you can like reshape how people look. And then in like high school, I was like, I want to be an investment banker. And then I kind of thought that was like my path in college. Like I'm going to go into finance. And ultimately that changed. Now I know it sounds like really bizarre that like young Brett was like, I want to be a lawyer or a doctor or something. And like, that's great. Obviously I had ambitions. Like I want to be in the MLB or something. But one can dream. But I guess just as you mature, your thoughts mature and you see like kind of like what's realistic, what's on the table. And so, yeah, those are the kind of like areas that I guess I was interested in.
So when did the vision flip? When you were like maybe senior year of college, what was that like for you? I mean, was
Sure.
Healthcare Huddle even a thought? I know you obviously work at Capital One. Like, talk through that.
Yeah. So obviously, I came into the University of Maryland, part of a program called Freshman Connection, and because of Freshman Connection, I wasn't like directly admitted to the business school. So I came into school with the mindset to get into Smith, and I guess when I got in there, I was going to study finance. And so again, I was very diligent my freshman year, worked hard, applied to be a transfer student. I got in and I declared my major as finance. And I was able to get an internship at TD Securities in New York City my sophomore year. And prior to getting the internship, like, oh my God, this is a big internship. I'm a sophomore. I'm going to be in New York City. I was working in like credit banking or something like that. And then when the internship actually started and went through, I was like, oh my God, this is miserable. I absolutely don't like finance. I have no idea what's going on. I felt like none of it aligned with like my values and who I was, which of course, like sophomore year, I was like, you're finding yourself after like your year or so in college. And I kind of just sat there every day, like working from like 8 to 8. Sometimes I didn't even have that much work. I just had to stay. And I just remember being like, this is not what I want to do. And so I spent a lot of time like writing in a notebook, like ideas or kind of like figuring out like what it is I wanted to do. And that's when I started to get exposed to like consulting, whatever consulting meant at the time. And I was like, maybe I want to go into advertising to challenge my creativity or marketing, and spent a lot of time like conducting informational interviews to figure out where my interests lied. And then I was like, maybe I want to work for a startup and like help a company grow. So obviously like sophomore me, so many thoughts rolling through my mind. And so enter that first semester of my junior year. That is what I've told a lot of people has been like the most transformative year of my life, because I had this internship that really told me what it is that I don't want to do. And I felt stuck because I was like, but I thought finance was where I wanted to be. And that's because I guess I did not know what more was out there, and what was actually feasible. And so I got in touch with a company called Good Uncle that was on our campus for a while. I'm sure you guys remember.
Good Uncle.
Good
I
Uncle.
remember. They had
Great.
good mac and cheese.
Great mac and cheese. And
they did have good mac and cheese.
They had great food. And so I went on a Smith in New York trip for the entrepreneurship, entrepreneurship track, because all the other tracks were taken. And it was almost like meant to be, because I was exposed to these startups in New York. and like was able to meet like the co-founders and the people working there. And I was like, I want to be in this environment, and like, look how much autonomy all the workers have. And so got in touch with one of the early employees there who was the head of business development, and kind of got like a pseudo internship helping them with like marketing and growth. So I was like a strategy and growth intern. And that's when I was like, wow, I really want to go into like the startup world. But I was like, I don't know how feasible that is. So I was like, maybe I'm going to try with consulting for a little bit and move from there. So right before I went abroad my junior year, I switched my major to management from finance, because I was like, I feel like I'm being pigeonholed serving as a finance major. So I spoke to my advisor, and she was like, oh, you sure you want to switch to management? Like, people usually pair it with something. I'm like, I don't care. I want to study management. I want to like amp up my leadership, understand strategy better. And then when I was abroad, I was internshipless and basically got a role at a small consulting firm in Arlington that summer. And from there, just my interest in startup world and solving problems just continued to evolve. And that ultimately led me to seeing Capital One job, which is the management rotational program. So I was like, I'm getting exposed to management, getting exposed to problem solving for pretty much a young company. And then obviously enter like December of 2019. That's when things for Healthcare Huddle started to evolve a little bit. And I kind of just picked it up. I'm like, this would be a cool project for the end of my senior year, and the rest is history at that point. So to answer your question, like sophomore year, summer was exceptionally transformative.
Totally. I mean, you just talked through so many different experiences and how your vision for yourself. I mean, even when you talked about when you were younger, you wanted to be a lawyer, you wanted to be plastic surgeon, investment banker. These are big time jobs that obviously you need a lot of experience to have. But you knew in the back of your head that I think you wanted to be successful. You wanted to do something that you felt your value and your impact in the world. And as you're talking through your stories in college, your vision obviously was altered based upon your self-awareness of what you wanted at that time. And then you get to the job at Capital One, and now you're here starting your own company after realizing that you want to be in the startup world with Healthcare Huddle. Let's talk about Healthcare Huddle for a second. I know we talked about vision. It's really important. But what is it about young adults, or maybe old adults, whoever? Healthcare Huddle talks about healthcare, and you want to educate the world about healthcare. Talk through your mission about that.
Yeah. So you kind of hit the nail on the head there. So I think the biggest thing is, but young adult, older adult, a lot of us are busy. We don't have that much time to sit down and consume information, and our attention spans are shortening. And so my brother experienced this firsthand when he was interviewing for medical school, and like people came out of the interview like saying, oh, they were talking about the healthcare industry. And he's like, oh my God, I have no idea what's going on in the healthcare industry. I may know like textbook healthcare, but I have no idea what's going on in the very industry I want to enter. And then as he started college, he recognized and was interviewing some of his classmates, and they felt the same way. Very few of them actually consumed healthcare information, and if they did, it was very rarely, because a lot of the medical journals or the information on what's going on in the healthcare industry is very dense. And that can be applied to every industry, business news, and so he saw a need for us to find a way to simplify what's going on in the healthcare industry in a way that is digestible, enjoyable, and doesn't take a lot of time to consume. And so that is what spurred the idea for like looking at a newsletter as a way to consume information. And you see the likes of like the Skim or Morning Brew, who are simplifying either worldly news or business news for the millennial, or what we like to call like the modern health student and professional. And so we try to keep all of our content like short and concise, but enjoyable and conversational, because that's just what the trend is going with how we want to consume information. People don't want to start their mornings off reading some densely filled piece of information. They want something that is quick, to the point, and gives them the need to know to move forward, to crush their week, to be the smartest person in the classroom or the boardroom. And that's really what we're going for and what we're pushing for and what we've been doing for the past year and a half.
So I want to ask you a follow-up question, Brett, that I think ties into Healthcare Huddle and your guys' mission, which is just around education, to your point of people don't want to read dense stuff every morning, especially our generation. We are the generation of constantly having our phones glued to our fingertips and being able to access essentially any piece of information at any time, anywhere in the world, right? How do you think young people can empower themselves to learn more and have the vision of what they want to learn when there is so much information out there at their fingertips? It's almost overwhelming, right? And it's like analysis paralysis of, I don't even know where to begin or where to start or what I want to learn. I know I want to always educate myself. I think a lot of people have that mindset, but it's almost like, dang, what do I even do first? Like Khan Academy and go back to learning long division because I don't remember how to do that. Like, where do you go?
Yeah.
Khan Academy is cool, dude.
If you're watching Khan Academy for fun, you're a different breed of human. Yeah, I have a lot of respect. I have a lot of respect for you. So I think that's a great question. Like you touched on like a real problem. Like there is information overload. It's called like the CNN effect. Like so much news and information 24/7. How do you split up and like take in what matters and stuff? And so I think like the biggest thing is like, we have the greatest tool ever invented, the internet, like at our fingertips. And so I think the biggest thing is like doing a little bit of critical thinking. So yeah, you're consuming all this information, but there's so many sources to kind of like get deep on a subject. So like if you want to keep up with like strictly business news, like perhaps you want to subscribe to Morning Brew. You want to keep up with just healthcare news, perhaps subscribe to Healthcare Huddle, which you should do. And so I think it's about going out and finding like these niche areas where to like get your information from. And that's what you're seeing because like New York Times is great. Wall Street Journal is great. But people kind of want to hone in on like in a specific area and get like specific content from a specific brand or person. And so, I would encourage people to subscribe to newsletters and get in a routine of actually reading them because they can get very lost in your inbox. Set time during the day to watch something on YouTube that is, that is enjoyable and educational at the same time. And perhaps like, I hate saying it, like try to pick up a book and read something. But people don't want to do that necessarily. So I almost say like, it's like follow the right people on social media where to get information from. And just ensure you're thinking critically about where am I getting my news from? Is this like a good way to get my news? Do I necessarily care about like those headlines or what's going on with like the Kardashians? And like maybe I should spend more time, keeping up with things that are like relevant to my industry or like are relevant to health and like helping me grow as a person.
I think what's so interesting is you say like follow the right person, and the right person is going to be different for everybody.
Yeah. So
and
right.
like that's almost scary in the sense that like people are getting their news the way they want to get their news, whether that is from a CNN or a Fox News or an NBC, whatever it is, or it's that person on Twitter that they follow, or they say something, I'm going to unfollow them. And now I'm not getting any of that information, maybe from the person who has the best informative information. That scares me a little bit, that people can create this
podcast that people listen to and they're listening to two 25-year-olds.
Yeah, but like, what I mean?
Crazy.
It's just like wild to me that people can create a bubble. They can get the news and listen and digest what they want to believe. And they can push away, unsubscribe, unfollow something that, I don't agree with that. That makes me feel one way. And that's a challenge. I'm sure with Healthcare Huddle, you guys are trying to find the medium between the people who are on one side and the other, just as everyone else is, because you want to be the best healthcare newsletter out there. And the way to do that is to be as, I guess, not biased as you can. Right?
Yeah. Again, you make a great point. And it's tough to say follow the right people because the right person is going to be different for everybody. And that's why I say to be like a critical thinker. You know, like it's tough because people want to mindlessly scroll social media. So if they see an opinion or they see something on TikTok, and like those For You pages can be dangerous because it's curated for you, and you could start seeing misinformation on there. And, you know, you're mindlessly scrolling. So you're just going to read and listen to whatever you're hearing without like pausing and being like, was that true or not? And it is tough to decipher between what is credible and what's not. And yeah, we do struggle with that challenge at Healthcare Huddle. But obviously the biggest thing that I've been focused on from like a brand perspective is like making sure that we are looking as credible as possible and being as credible as possible, you know, in the eyes of an audience member or in the eyes of someone who stumbles upon us. Because again, anyone could start a newsletter or a podcast or a social media account and start curating content, and you want to ensure that you're coming from an area of credibility and making sure that you're building yourself as a credible brand or a credible person. So
Couldn't agree more.
I got an additional media question follow up to that.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we're spinning this from education into media, which I love because we haven't talked about this yet on the Elevation Nation podcast. So Parker was mentioning, right? You can kind of curate the opinions that you actually see. Now, I want us to go back, 50 years before everybody had social media and smartphones. The opinions that you got were those of your local newspaper and people that were at, I don't know, your synagogue, your church, or the local bar, right? Globalization and information wasn't as, available to all these people. It was very micro local. So it's almost like, is it worse being oblivious to all the things going on and outside opinions like it was back then? Or is it worse that you know about these opinions and you choose that they are wrong and block them out? Right? Because that's kind of what we're seeing now. It's a micro local version based on opinion, right? Yeah, we're global, but you can hone in on such a specific niche of opinion that you only want to see, just like as if you were living in, I don't know, North Dakota back in the day, and that's all you cared about, your little town in North Dakota, right?
Right.
I don't know. Just an interesting thought I had while you guys were talking.
Yeah.
Good point, Sammy.
It is a great point. And I think that that's the challenge that we're dealing with, in society. That, like, the internet has brought a lot of benefits. Like, so much benefits. The internet is also so much larger than we know. And, part of me does think that, like, if you didn't have access to all this information, you probably have you'd be forming your own opinions on things. But there is a benefit to the internet where that, like, you can challenge your own opinions because you're given access to more information. So if you have a certain opinion, like, there's things being thrown at you on the internet, or that you can dive into some research to challenge your own opinions, where I don't think that was as feasible back then, pre-internet, pre-mass information. So I do think that there's a big challenge there. And it's just, like, people trust people. So you see, like, in the media industry, you're seeing a rise of, like, people, like, getting information from individuals versus brands. So, like, people will follow people's newsletters, or they'll follow a specific journalist.
Like Adam Schefter breaking the news.
Yeah, exactly. Who do you want to get your? Yes, Adam Schefter. Maybe
no, I want to get my
ESPN.
NFL news from Adam Schefter because I know that he's a credible source, probably more credible than ESPN.
Exactly.
He works for ESPN.
Right, but still, people value, like, the individual, and obviously that's why he's so valuable to ESPN. Like, if he said he was leaving, ESPN would be like, whoa, like, we'll pay you a ton of money to stick around because a lot of our audience is looking for you. So yeah, I just do think it's a huge challenge, and, like, I deal with it too. Like, if you're following certain people on Twitter, those are the people. That's the kind of, you're creating your own bubble, like you were saying, Parker. If you're watching CNN every night or you're watching Fox News every night, like, you may begin to form certain opinions. And again, that's why I just say, like, it's like, just got to critically think. And a lot of Americans are stubborn. So, like, they have a viewpoint and they stick on that. I am guilty of doing that as well. But sometimes I check myself and I'm like, okay, I gotta open up to hearing this side, maybe doing some research on it to hear the other point. And like you're seeing it now with like the mask debate, the vaccines debate, and all of that. And it's like, okay, I have my stance like on that, and then like, well, let's hear what the other side is thinking, and not immediately be like, you're wrong. It's like, okay, well, coming from a certain standpoint, like, let's hear them. And there's definitely a good amount of people in the United States and in this world who are in agreement with them.
Well, you're a very reasonable person, Brett, because I don't think many people think that way, to be honest with you. But I would hope so. I want more people to think that way, but everyone has their opinions, and people very much, when it comes to a very polarizing opinion, they stick with it. And, you know, I think that you obviously need to be informed to make a decision on both sides before you actually can then promote what you think. But, Brett, I want to bring this back to vision, because we also still need to get it to accountability. We're talking about Healthcare Huddle. We're talking about the media industry, which you are in. And obviously you have a full-time job. How are you, I guess, balancing all this stuff in your life? Something that Sam and I talk about all the time are the buckets in your life. You know, you need to prioritize the buckets in your life. And, you know, we say if there's 3 buckets in your life that you prioritize, like, what are those things, and how are you balancing them?
Yeah. It's definitely been a challenge, but it's been a bit of a year and a half now since everything has kind of like been pumping between Healthcare Huddle and my job at Capital One and just dealing with my personal life. And so it took me some time to figure out what's the best way to organize myself, what's the best way to like keep me focused. And a big thing that you hear and a big thing that my brother mentions is like, what's your North Star? What is it that you want to do and want to achieve? And what are you going to do in your life, and where are you going to devote your time to get to that North Star? And that sometimes requires you to say no to certain things. So for a while, my brother has this method of like what we call our stickies. And it's basically like laying out your stickies for the week or for the day that pertain to a certain area in your life. So I split my stickies up into 3 core buckets, which is Capital One, Healthcare Huddle, and my personal life. And personal life includes like, you know, my health, my relationships, and just anything else that's going on outside of the other 2 buckets. And so I use Trello to keep myself organized. And like every week I will like create a card that basically has like what I call my rocks for the week. And the rocks are split up into those 3 areas. Like, what are the non-negotiables I need to get done for Healthcare Huddle? What are the non-negotiables I need to get done for Capital One? And what are the non-negotiables I need to get done for my personal life? And so, for example, one of them may be for the personal life, like you're going to exercise 4 times this week. That's non-negotiable. Figure out how to get it done. You're going to, you know, it could be as simple as you're going to FaceTime your girlfriend 3 or 4 times this week. You know, got to get that done. Non-negotiable. You know, check yourself. And so then every day I will basically lay out what I need to do for Healthcare Huddle, for Capital One, for my personal life, and ensure that it aligns with those rocks for the week, which could also be seen as like your North Star for the week. So I'll look at my schedule and be like, okay, I need to get this done for Healthcare Huddle. We just launched an ambassador program, so a lot of my tasks have surrounded that. So quick shout out, if you're a student, you know, in the health space, check out our newsletter, because we'll be talking about it, and our Instagram to apply to the program. So that's what was taking up my week and what I see like on my daily task. Then personal, I always add like exercise today, or go for a walk, make time for mindfulness. And that way I'm able to see it. I'm not just keeping it in my head. It's written down somewhere. And I'm able to keep myself accountable to get it done. Granted, there are times when I don't get certain stuff done, and that's fine. But you have to look back and be like, why didn't I get that done? I didn't get a chance to work out today. Oh, you were busy. Oh, after work, you decided to lay in your bed and like be on your phone for a little bit when you could have like shifted to work out. And that's okay. You don't need to be hitting everything every day, but ensure you know why. And again, have that self-awareness on why you're not getting it done. And just be sure that you're writing everything out so that you have a clear picture. And the moment you get it out of your head, like it frees up space to focus on other things.
We promised Elevation Nation we didn't prep Brett with those answers, because those were sick, and I think transitioned beautifully into accountability. I love using Kanban boards like Trello. If you guys aren't familiar, check out what a Kanban board is. Check out Trello. I think it's just a great way my mind works in the same way where I have different buckets. I want to know exactly what I need to cross off in each of those buckets. And that's kind of how my brain works as well. So if people want to use that tool, feel free to reach out to myself or Brett. We can hook you up with some different ones, but Trello is definitely a great one.
Yes.
So I appreciate you sharing that. And I think that's why we love that vision really blends into accountability, right? You can have that vision of, I want to get these things done, but until you put them on those stickies on your Trello Kanban board and hold yourself accountable to do those over the next day, over the next week, whatever your deadline is, it'll never happen, right? We come up with excuses, we get sidetracked, we go in a different direction, and it ends up getting pushed out further and further and further. So I think holding yourself accountable, this last piece of mental fortitude, obviously that's one method that you use, Brett. Another piece of accountability that we love to talk about besides tools or, like Trello or things like that are mentors, people that in our lives also hold us accountable. Are there mentors that you have, whether you know them or mentors that inspire you through social media that you think, yeah, this guy lights a fire under my butt and makes sure that I'm staying true to my North Star? Sounds like it might be your brother, Jared.
Yeah. I mean, I think you hit it there. My older brother is definitely a mentor of mine. He's my best friend. He's my brother. He's my business partner in this case. And he definitely keeps me in check. And definitely when we're together and like he's waking up and working out, I'm like, all right, I got to go work out, within my own boundaries and limits. But he definitely has served as a mentor, and I attribute a lot of what I've accomplished or where my mindset is to him, as well to my parents, and then even bits from my younger brother too. So I think we definitely all build off of each other. And there's definitely people on Twitter who I admire, and things that they tweet sometimes keep me in check. For example, one of the co-founders of Morning Brew, Alex Lieberman, he's very honest and vulnerable on Twitter about his anxieties and what he's doing to build himself up and keep structured. And I like to follow kind of what he puts out there and try to implement it into my own life. And so, he's definitely someone that I would say is like, unbeknownst to him, but a mentor of mine. And then, just kind of seeing what other folks are doing out there. Like there's like David Goggins, if you guys know him, and he's just a badass.
Of course we know David.
Yeah.
Oh man,
crazy.
I got beef with David Goggins. You hear David Goggins? I got beef with you.
I don't even know David Goggins, but like he's mad at me for something. So sometimes when I see his
That's what I'm implying.
sometimes when I see his videos, I'm like, I got to get up and run.
Like, what I do to you? I didn't do anything. Like,
exactly.
You're just talking like you're gonna like punch me in the face. We don't even know each other, dude.
So funny. And then an inanimate object that is actually my something that keeps me accountable and is like a motivator in my life is I just got a Whoop recently. And having the Whoop has kept me like accountable for getting sleep, as well as like exercising, because you get like a coach through it, like an AI coach. And it's like, hey, it's time to go to bed if you want to get 7 hours and like be at your peak tomorrow. And I'm like, I got to go to bed because I want to, keep track and have my data be like set. And you kind of get like a rush of dopamine when you're like, oh, I'm in the green waking up in the morning. And that's new recently. And that kept me accountable because I realized like I want to get better at getting better rest and better sleep. And I was doing research as to what would be a good thing to get. And the Whoop is something that came up. So for those looking to better their health and their sleep, I definitely recommend Whoop or the Oura Ring or something like that.
I love that. That's super cool. I mean, I wear an Apple Watch, but it doesn't tell me when to go. It does tell me when to go to bed. But I don't get like a green ring when I wake up.
I'm cracking up, man.
I get
Brett sounded like PFT on that.
That's hilarious.
Like, I don't know if you've heard, like, Whoop sponsors them. Like,
I want my
and I got a great night's sleep from my Whoop.
And let me add,
Whoop.
Exactly. And let me add, you can create teams. So I'm on a team with my brother, his friend, and one of my best friends. And like, we have a group chat. And when I'm like, damn, they all worked out today. I got to go get outside and like amp up my strain. Or I wake up in the morning and I'm like, he got 7 hours of sleep and I got 6.5. And I'm like, I don't want that. I want to be the one getting the most amount of sleep. So from a health perspective, use your friends to keep you accountable. And if you need to use technology to do it, then just whatever gets it done is what you should do.
Not just your friends to keep your health accountable. Use your friends to keep your life in check.
Yes,
whatever
absolutely.
it is, whatever bucket it is, your friends, the people who know you best, they're there to hold you accountable. And you should hold them accountable too, because
Absolutely.
they will also appreciate that. Brett, we walked through mental fortitude, man. We went through self-awareness, went through vision, we went through accountability. We hope it made sense to you, because Sam and I live and breathe this framework. You know, I think it's helped us personally grow, be better people, both professionally and personally. And I think Elevation Nation as well has really caught on to the framework too. And this has been such a good conversation. And if you do listen to the Elevation Nation podcast, we do ask 2 questions to every guest that comes on. So without further ado, if you could give advice to your about to graduate college self, this is not too long ago, about the real world, advice about the real world, what would it be?
That's a great one. I think my advice would be to kind of hone in on yourself and what your goals are, whether or not they're like explicitly written out or something, but just hone in on that and block out what other people think. Because I just feel like I noticed that a big thing that holds people back is like what other people think. They want to post on LinkedIn because they don't want everyone to see like what it is they're posting, or like they're trying too hard or something. So the biggest thing I would say is just like stop caring what people think, or get more specific about who you want to get opinions from, or who you actually care what they what they think of you. So maybe that's your family, maybe that's your girlfriend, or maybe that's your colleagues. And it shouldn't be that big of a group. But that is one thing that I would say is to really hone in on who you are and what you want to accomplish, and block out any barriers that may get in the way of doing that. And it tends to be the fear of what other people may think of you or think of you.
That was awesome. Like, I was thinking, like, isn't it crazy that someone could think they have the most amazing achievement in their life, but they're scared to share it because they're scared to think of what other people think about it? Like that's crazy. That was never probably a thing 20 years ago. Like
Right.
Think about how many ideas don't ever come to the public eye that could change the world, just because people are scared that people will laugh or make
It's
fun of them.
crazy.
Right.
Starts with a little mental fortitude, if you ask me.
Exactly. And the biggest thing, if you know what it is that you want to accomplish and how you want to do it, then like you shouldn't have to care what other people are thinking. And if they say something, you're like, yeah, whatever. Hey, I see what you're saying, but like I'm doing what I need to do to move things forward, and that's what's needed.
That's exactly right, man. I love that. And so, Brett, our final question for you, man, is we've talked a lot about this term, so I hope you're ready. What does mental fortitude mean to you?
It's a great question. I think that mental fortitude means setting a vision for yourself that allows you to make an impact on yourself, on friends and family, on your community, and ultimately on the world. So if you nail down those key elements, then things should really fall in place. And I must say that like it may take time to really hone in on what that vision is. And like mine definitely evolves every day, every week, every month. And it's okay for things to change. And to just recognize that everyone's on a different path, as cliche as it sounds, but it's true. And that's another thing of feeling pressured by the world around you and what other people think. But mental fortitude is just really, to me, based on this conversation, is honing in on like your North Star and on your vision, keeping things structured on that vision, and everything should fall into place whenever that may be. But like that should surely come, because you want to feel fulfilled when your final day comes.
Wow. Whenever
I was about to say, ain't that the truth? Damn, man.
through,
No regrets, man.
No
regrets.
regrets.
through good
No
times,
regrets.
through bad times, through rough times, through easy times. If you have a vision, then you'll have the mental fortitude to get over the hump and keep going.
Yes.
And that's
Absolutely.
the beautiful thing about it. Brett, this has been a fun conversation. Can you believe it's already 53 minutes into this conversation? We've talked
Wow.
about a very wide spread of topics. We've talked about media. We've talked about newsletters. We've talked about Alex Lieberman, mentors, self-awareness, creativity, MacBooks, everything in between. And I can't thank you enough for joining us because this was totally fun. I respect the hell out of what you and your brother and your team are doing. I think it's needed, and I think that the world will be better off because of what you guys are doing. So Sam and I are so fortunate and privileged to be able to share your story and what you guys are doing.
Appreciate it. This has been really awesome. Thank you, Sam Parker, for having me. And I just want to say to any guests listening to consider signing up or checking out who we are at healthcarehuddle.com and just checking us out on Twitter and Instagram.
And we'll link to all that, Elevation Nation, so don't worry. Brett, much love, man. Glad we got to reconnect. You definitely have mental fortitude. And Elevation Nation, until next week, peace.